Welcome, this is Kevin, also known as AWOL, and today I am going to finish up this little small bag that I've been working on. And I wanted to be able to show you something here first. So there are 6 points, right, on this bag, right? So if we fold it in half, it looks like this. And that kind of doesn't really help us with what we want to be able to do here today, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold how that comes down on the side, right? So this point here and this point here are basically, these ones are folded in half, right? And then this is what it would look like, kind of, right? And mind you, this is not drawn to scale or anything too good. I'm not even that great of an artist. But what I'm going to do with this bag is I'm going to make this a straight line across here. Now, mind you, just the nature of it, it will kind of bow down just a little bit, but that's kind of natural and that's fine. And then what I'm going to do is take this diamond, right? Because that's a whole diamond, and I'm going to bring this point to here. Right, so this whole bit here will be, since they're the same number of strings, when they get tied together, it's going to come across. And what that will do is, if we looked at the bag from the side, you'll get kind of this effect to it, which is better than, say, just going squared across for the whole thing, because then it becomes very flat, more like a phone case, or doing the triple way like I did the last bag, which kind of, I can't even draw it because it's really three-dimensional. It kind of, well, from a top-down perspective, it's more or less coming in, it's terrible, but kind of like that. And that's fine and good, but it might not be as conducive for throwing things into the bag. So that's what we're going to work on today. So here's the bag. And like I said, this is what it looks like. You know, we have 3 points coming down, but we're just going to kind of give it a little bit of a twist. So that way this one's sort of folded in half, and this one over here is folded in half. And you can see exactly what I was talking about, right? Now, I can actually clip this up much higher because it's pretty long. And it's just this little area right here that we actually have to do anything with. So, since it's just one small area, and mind you, I have to be certain when I do this to get exactly the opposite side, otherwise the whole thing doesn't work. Yeah, this angle will come over this way. Does that make sense? Now, since I'm only working with these few strings, I can take all these, move them over here, and I'd be less likely to have any kind of hang-ups or issues. The bigger trick now is, I haven't done this on graph paper, which might have actually helped in the sense that I would be able to know, like, I could just bring the dark blue down and know where to stop. But I'm stubborn, and this is an alternative way of doing things, right? So essentially, I won't use this string here, right, this light blue, nor would I end up using this blue. These ones are already down to that level that we're stopping at, right? Now, just take little baby steps here. I know that I can get away with that first diamond. That's easy. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And hopefully you guys kind of get this, that, you know, even though we could kind of work things out on paper, there are times where an experiment like this, you can kind of eyeball it if that's what it takes to kind of get you through the process a little easier, a little faster, perhaps. I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm going to bring these down and end over here, and then I'll be able to kind of see like how much more there is to go. I know that that single diamond is not enough to surpass this coming down to the middle, but I can't say that necessarily I can do the next bigger diamond. So I approach it cautiously. Okay. As much as I like this pattern, I think I'm going to have to give it a break for a little bit because it feels like my channel has been dedicated to this design for like most of this month. So I will definitely have some new ideas, new projects for you guys coming up after this. All right. Getting closer, but still not there. Come back. And this one. Okay. So now we know that when this comes in contact with the last string there, that's where it stops. That's how we get a nice flat one. So every time you get to that, you'd leave off both strings. And it would turn out that that would be this one again. So that's perfect, right? That also means that as we complete this diamond, that's where that one stops. See? Not very difficult at all. Okay, let's do the other side. And the other side should, in fact, be exactly the same, all things being equal. And when it's these like red on reds, it really doesn't matter which direction you take. If you kind of notice the bag is kind of, the pattern itself is sort of leaning in a certain direction, that could be a deciding factor. But other than that, it really doesn't matter. You can kind of pull things together though. If you see a bit of a lean, you can use your knots to help balance things. So if I sound a little nasally, I do apologize. It is the rainy season here in Singapore, and it is taking quite a toll on me this year. I'm not sure quite why this year more than, let's say, last year's, but it really is hitting me pretty hard. Could be the masks, could be all the condensation and stuff in the masks might be contributing to it. But I would rather wear a mask and potentially keep others safe, as well as keeping my family here at home safe, than to try to get an exemption or something. But that's just me. That's not trying to get all preachy here. All right. So like I said, it's just like the other side. These two are out, and then bring this blue down, and then that one's done. Now if we want to do this sort of like a one string at a time because we're not sure how it's going to play out, that's easy enough. We'll bring down just the blue. I'll show you how we do this. This blue has to come down 3. So there's 1, 2, and you can tell it's getting really short. This is why I didn't decide to go much further with this whole project, as I knew that it was going to be coming to a point where I'd have to add string. And despite the fact that the reds are so long, all the blues would need replacing here soon. So This one comes down the same. Two, three. And you can see that that leaves these two reds to go off and be finished. And that means this blue can only come down one space. So these reds will make their diamond in the inside. And those dark blues will come down one. This red knot will be the end of this part here. That's it. I will flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. And then I'll show you how I go ahead and tie up the base of this by turning the whole thing inside out. All right, back in a moment. Okay, so I have all the strings set up in a leather pony or a stitching pony. And if you notice, those hands, those are not my hands. Those are nice, soft little hands. She happens to be really good at doing the square knot. It's also known as a reef knot. I've been corrected on this before, if you can't tell. And she's just going to go down the straight part of this, and then we'll reposition it in the clamp to do the rest. But this way it kind of gets the one flat segment sort of out of the way and make sure that everything's going to line up properly. Doesn't have to be this way. This is just a thought on how it might actually be able to work out the easiest. I certainly try to give you guys like the easiest possible methods, because I figure most people that are doing this, if you're watching the video, is because you weren't already making bags or you weren't already putting this kind of stuff together. So that's why you're watching. So I try to keep it simple. Hopefully that comes through without being condescending. I don't mean to. I certainly believe that there's even room where I could learn a few things. Certainly even from my wife. She's very meticulous about this kind of portion of it. And I think that works out in our favor. And yeah, I think for me, I think why I struggle with this part is when I pull really tight, big, strong, manly hands end up kind of digging into me a bit. And the other thing is I get excited. Let my emotions get kind of carried away with it. And what tends to happen then is that I go too fast. And that's kind of not what you need at a point like this. You need to take your time and be as meticulous as you were with the whole rest of the bag. So, and you can see it's coming together quickly. It's kind of, I love this part. Mostly because I know that I'm, nearing the completion of the project and soon be on to the next one, which is always fun. Mind you, I'm kind of undecided on what to work on. So if you guys have any ideas, suggestions, or maybe a project that you've been thinking about and you're not sure, how to quite do it, give me some suggestions in the comments, and we'll see what we can do. I can't promise that I can do anything that you come up with. I do have a fair amount of string, but I might not have the string needed for your particular idea. So kind of keep that in mind when giving the suggestions. Yeah, as you can see, some of these strings were incredibly short. I was fortunate that I made it all the way to the end, um, considering how little that there is left. But obviously, it's enough for one of these knots, and that's really all that mattered at this point. So, yay. If your ideas, still on that thought of mine, if you have an idea, you don't have a way to describe it, but you want to pass it along, you can always either kind of tag me in a comment over on Instagram, or you could go to my website and get the email. What do you know what the email is, honey? Not just nuts at AKAAWOL.com. So there's a couple methods you can use to reach me. There's is a Facebook page as well, called Ask Knots, which most people haven't seemed to have gotten used to yet. It was meant to be a place where people who couldn't leave comments on my webpage would have an alternative space for asking their questions. And I probably had it for a good year and a half or longer. And so far, I don't think I've gotten any questions over there. So you could be the first. You could be a trendsetter. This is your opportunity. So you can see she's coming near the end of this little segment, which is pretty cool. I have to say I'm super pleased with the way this is turning out. This is definitely fun. Oh, and if you don't already have a stitching pony, I highly recommend it. I think um, it makes doing this part of the work a whole lot easier. I think you're almost at the actual end. I would double check that those aren't the slip going down. No, okay, no, you're right. So yeah, the stitching pony basically um, clamps your work in place and holds it up in the air, so that way you can tie the knots and not have your work going all over the place. So it's, I'm not sure. I don't think it was terribly expensive, less than $50, but probably worth every penny of it because, again, it holds your work in a way that makes this really possible. I bet you that other rust is from the other side. Yeah, the blues. Right. In order to be able to put the top corner in with the other corner. Right. Is that about there? Yep. Okay, so now basically the far end corner comes into the other corner, and it's two short little segments on either side that have to be connected. So it's a little bit dicey. I wish there was a sufficient vocabulary for this sort of thing to be able to explain exactly what's happening here. But if there is a vocabulary for it, I'm afraid I just don't know what that is. Again, she's just doing the reef knots, and she has a method you might notice here. In order to get the strings out of the way, she flips them up over the top. So she does this like a top-down approach because it makes getting the tangle, the tassely bits here, kind of up and out of the way. So once we get this all done, then I can kind of cut off all those rest of those ends and add it to the scrap pile, for which I have quite a collection, as you might imagine. Again, of course, patience is a virtue here. If you rush at this, you're likely to make a mistake. And let's face it, I mean, this is still quite a number of skeins of floss in this one. So this is not something you kind of want to have something go wrong so easily. I'm trying so hard to look over my wife's shoulders to see what she's doing. Yeah, it's one of the strands had a needle or something go to it. Pull the end of it. Yep. So this will be the how we finish up the bag. This will be I'll just let her do this off camera for the other part of it. But I kind of wanted to give you guys an idea, kind of a feel for how this works. She's only doing one side of where the angle is. The other, the string that you see hanging off to her right, those are yet to be tied. We'll have to kind of slightly reposition things. But essentially, it's the same thing. There'll be 4 of these segments, 2 on this side, and then, of course, 2 on the other end of the bag. But I suspect you guys get tired of seeing us do the same knots again and again and again. I can tell that because the YouTube does actually have statistics and the amount of fall off. So when it gets down to the corner where the dark blues and the other of the color ends come, I'm going to put all those together in a much larger knot, and that's because it ends up right at that corner, and that is probably where the bag will take the most amount of stress from putting objects and things in there. So to kind of help beef it up just a little bit, there'll be a big knot right there at that very corner. But I'll show you all that when the bag is finished. So back in a second with an image of that. Okay, so here we have it. I am delighted with this. So let me show you what was going on with the base there. This right here is the long straight area. This is what we got knotted first. Then it's these diagonals that had to come in. So the longest part of the point right here had to join where the straight line starts. And the same goes with the other side. It's exactly the same. And in fact, this thing's perfectly symmetrical, even down to the point that the darkest meets the darkest. So there you have it. It is smaller, a bit easier, and I think this is something that I can expect to see some of you guys on Instagram putting together. I think it came out wonderful, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with. So, yeah, use the hashtag inspired by AKAAWOL so that way I can spot it and possibly feature you in an upcoming video. And before I go, I want to say thank you to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are absolutely the best. You guys make this all be available. I don't make anything from YouTube, so the cameras and all the stuff that makes these videos possible. It all comes from you guys. So just want to say thank you very much for all that you guys do for me. I really appreciate it. So until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.